Hey everyone, Brian Lagunas here, and today I'm going to answer another tech question. If you have a tech question you like to have answered, just ask it below. You don't have to subscribe, you don't have to like anything. Just ask your question, and if I find time or know the answer, I'll do a video on it. So can't wait to see what you ask in the comments below. Now, let's get to today's question. Today's question comes from lots of people. Honestly, I forgot. It's been so long since I've done a video. I've actually forgotten who asked this question, but it was a number of people. A number of people asked this question, and it was all about showing dialogues in an MVVM application. Now, this video is a long time coming. This has been at the top of my list. I really wanted to get this out to everyone. And so basically, the main question is, well, in an MVVM application where you're not supposed to access or use any view objects in a view model, how do I show windows and show dialogues and respond to them closing and all that great stuff? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. We're going to start with the basic abstraction of creating a dialog service, and then we're going to build on that service to keep adding more and more cool little features. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoy this video, and well, let's just go ahead and get right to it. Okay, so the application we're going to be working with today is a very simple WPF application. As you can see, our main window has a single button on it, and when we click that button, it's going to execute a command called ShowDialog. We have our data context set to a main window view model. So if we take a look at that view model, we'll see that it's a very basic view model that has a single command called ShowDialog. So when we click that button, we're going to invoke the execute ShowDialog method. So now the problem here is, well, how do we actually show the dialog? Well, let's start by creating a dialog to show. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new window, and we'll just call this dialog window, right? Makes sense. Now we have this dialog window, and we want to do something with it. So let's go ahead and, I don't know, I just want to show something. So maybe like a text block or something like that. We'll throw some text in there. We'll say, this is a dialog. We'll go the horizontal alignment center, vertical alignment center, and we'll set the the font size to something big like 72, something like that. Okay, so this is the dialog. This is our dialog here, and we want to show this, and it's a window, right? It's a window. We need to show a window from a view model, but the rule is that you're not allowed to show or access, you're not allowed to use or access UI objects in your view model, okay? So what do we do here? We can't say, var dialog equals new dialog window. I mean, we can't do that. That's not allowed. As with anything MVVM, right, it's all about decoupling, okay? How do we decouple the showing of a dialog from the view into the view model? How do we make that separation but still perform the action? Well, we need some type of abstraction. And for me, that abstraction is always an interface. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to call this DialogService. That's right. We're going to create a service. Now, I always start with an interface, but this is just demo code. So for this demo here, I'm going to kind of put everything in one class, but ideally, this is going to be separated out where you'll have your interface in one project, maybe like a core, and then implementation somewhere else, right? I'm going to call this IDialogService. Service. Oh, I guess I better put my interface on here. Great, and we're going to have a void ShowDialog method. Right, we're just going to show a dialog. Now our class here is going to implement this interface called IDialogService. We'll go ahead and implement it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say var dialog equals new dialog window. Right, and we'll say dialog.showDialog. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to go into my view model. I'm going to have my IDialogService, call this the dialog service. Actually, I want to underline there. That's how I do my private variables. And we'll say equals a new dialog service. Now in a production application, I don't even do this. In a real world application, I'm injecting this service, this interface into a constructor. I never really knew anything up, but this is demo code, so we'll go with it, okay? So now I'm going to say DialogService.showDialog. All right, so let's run the application and see what happens. Here's the application running. I'm gonna hit the show dialog button here, boop. And actually it opened up on this other screen over here, so I'll just drag it over. But yeah, this is a dialog. Alrighty, looks pretty good. Works exactly how we would expect it, right? We were able to show this dialog without actually referencing this dialog in our view model. I'm actually gonna make a quick change just for debugging purposes, right? I'm gonna set the Windows startup location to like center screen. So next time I run this, I'm gonna run it and show it, it should show center screen and not off on my other screen over here. Okay, so this is pretty cool, right? I mean, we were able to take this dialog, this window, this UI component, abstract it away and show it. But let's be real, this isn't really what you're gonna expect. You're not gonna say, well, Brian, I don't wanna create a dialog window with custom views and all that for every single view I wanna show. I would really like to have just this idea of like a shell, right? This little shell window, and I just kind of inject my content into it. Well, because we have this abstraction of our dialog service, we can start getting a little creative now. We can start kind of building on this, this abstraction. So for example, let's say we want to do something like provide a name of the component that we want to show, or the name of the view we want to like inject into the dialog window. So what we can do is, how about we just add a little overload here? We'll say string, and we'll call this name. And we'll say string, and we'll call that name. Now, instead of, for example, just showing the dialog with basic content, let's create a new view. Let's create something like, let's create a new user control. And I'm gonna call this notification. Yeah, I'll just call it notification. Doesn't matter what we call it. Okay. And in here, let's go ahead. I'm gonna copy and paste some stuff. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna paste it in here. Instead of this is dialog, this is a notification. Okay. So we have some different context here. And actually, yeah, let's leave it here. Let's leave it here. Now we have our notification. Let's go back to our dialog service. And now what we want to do is we want to say, hey, when I show this dialog, I want to show the notification, right? That's what I want to see. I don't want to see some standard window that we created. I want to see a window with some injected view into it. Okay, great. So how will we do this? Well, we know that a dialog has content, right? So what we can do is let's go ahead and use the activator.create instance, and we got to create a type. So before we hop into that type, let me just hop up here. We'll say var type equals, we'll say type.getType $, because we're going to throw some stuff. Now, let's see, this is called dialogs and MVVM dot, and then we need the name, right? Because we're creating this type, I have to have the namespace, which is dialogs and MVVM. That's where the dialog's located. And now that I have that, I can go ahead and throw the type inside of here. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and create that content and inject it, right? We're going to set the content. We're using activator.create instance. In a real application, you might be doing something with injection, like dependency injection, right? But we're just going to do it the cheap way. And now let's run the application and let's see what we have. So now I'm going to hit the show dialog. Here's our show dialog, and looky there. This is a notification. Well, that's pretty cool. I was able to inject, right? Inject a different view inside of the window I'm showing. So I could technically create another type, like an error window. And when I call this, I could just say, you know, show error. Well, that's pretty cool. But we can do more. Like we can keep building on this abstraction, because we've built this abstraction between our interface and the implementation. Now we can kind of take this a little further. So for example, what do we need? You know what we need to be able to do? We need to be able to close the dialog, right? We need to go to our notification. I'm gonna change this to a stack panel. I'm gonna add a button. I'm gonna call it close me. And let's go ahead and add an event handler to it, right? And what we want to do here is we want to close the window, but because this notification view is within a window, what we can do is we can get the parent window by saying, hey, equals this dot parent as window, right? And you might want to do a null check, but I know it's not the case, so I'll just say close. That works for me, right? All right, let's go ahead and run the application and see what happens. Okay, so here's the application running. I'm gonna click the button, and here's our notification, close me, and it closes. Well, that's pretty cool. That's really cool, actually. But let's take this a little further because our view model might need to know when this closes, right? We want to know when the dialog closes from the view model so we can respond to it. So let's go back to our service and let's do this. Let's add an action with some type of parameter. We'll just make it a string, okay? And we're going to call this a callback, okay? Just go ahead and implement that here. Action type of string, callback. And what we want to do now is whenever this closes, we're going to notify this callback that the window closed and we want to do something with it. So what we can do here is we need to create basically an anonymous delegate, an anonymous event handler, if you will. So I'm going to say, what should we say? I'm going to go event handler, close event handler. Oops. Equals null. Always want to start with null because then we're going to say close event handler. Right? We're going to say close event handler equals this. We're going to use this anonymous method here. And we're going to say callback. And then what I actually want to do is I want to grab the, I think it's called dialog result. Yes. And to string it, this is the dialog result. And then what we want to do is to prevent any memory leaks, we're going to say dialog dot closed minus equals close event handler. So now you could probably guess what I'm going to do next. Dialog dot closed plus equals close event handler. So what we're doing is we're creating this event that we're handling. We're hooking into the closed event. Whenever it closes, we're going to call the callback in this method here, right? We're going to call this callback, passing in the dialog result as a string, and then we're going to unhook the event to clean up any memory. So what we want to do before we run this, let's go back to our notification here. Instead of saying window.close, why don't we set the dialog result? I think it's called, right? Or is it just result? Forgot what it's called. Results. Oh, excuse me. Window.dialog result. Equals true. Sure. So now let's go back to our main window view model. And as you can see, we have this little issue here. We have this show dialog. It's underlined. Well, because we have to have a callback now. What this callback going to look like? It's going to look like result. Just like this. And what do we want to do here? You know what? Let's just, I'm going to hit the debug. We'll say var test equals result. And we'll just hit a little breakpoint because I want to actually see this. So let's run the application. Okay, application's running. I'm going to hit show dialog. Here's our dialog. Close me. Well, look at there. Our main window view model has now been notified that we are closing the dialog. The dialog's been closed and I get a result back. See, this is the true that we passed through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the dialog again, but this time I'm going to hit the little X button here. So I'm gonna hit X. What's our result? False. It's false because we hit the X button. So now we know how the dialog was closed. Was it closed by hitting the X button? Was it closed because I had a cancel button or an OK button? Like you can control any of the parameters you pass back to your view model to respond to that closing, right? To that dialog closing. Okay, so you know what? I'm really happy about this abstraction that we've built around our dialogues, but I think we could do some really cool stuff here. So let me close the stuff out that I don't really care about. Don't care about that. Don't care about this. So let's go back to our ShowDialog service. Okay, now another thing that we can do here is what if we wanted to do something more strongly typed? Because right now, you know, I'm saying show dialog in this string, right? This like string. But what if I want to say, oh, show dialog this type of view model because I'm doing some type of mapping, right? So let's work on the API, okay? Let's work on the API a little bit. So I want to show dialog of like view model, something like that, right? And then we can have our action callback here. All right, so let's go ahead and implement this. And I know that we need to start abstracting away this code because now we have two show dialog methods. And I don't want to copy a bunch of code, right? We don't want to copy a bunch of code. So let's go ahead. I'm going to take this code. I'm going to extract a method called ShowDialog internal, right? I'm going to move this back to the top. Okay, so that's going to work for now. I think that'll work for now. We'll improve this as we go. Okay, so we have our show dialog. What we want to do now is we need to create some type of mapping, right? Because we need to be able to map the view model that we want to use to the actual dialog type. So let's go ahead and create maybe a static. Let's make this a static dictionary type. I'll just call this mappings, right? And we'll say it's a new dictionary. And then I want to throw some like register methods in here. Really just one. So we'll say public void register dialog, right? And then we're going to allow them to register the view model against the dialog type, right? So we can say something like tview and tview_model, something like this. Okay. Now what we can do is we're going to want to check. You might want to check if the mappings already contain this. Maybe you care, maybe you don't care. But in this case, we're not going to worry about it. In this case, I'm just going to say, hey, mappings.add type of tview_model and type of tview. Okay, see where I'm going with this. So in a real production application, you're probably going to want to do something a little more involved, but for our purposes, this is going to get the point across just fine. Oh, and I need to make this static. I almost forgot about that part. Okay, so now what we want to do is we have this mapping. So now we can grab that name or that type out of our show dialog method from the mapping. Var type equals mappings index of type of the view model, right? And I should I should stick with my convention of saying TV model. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the type. So this is the view type that we're going to get. And this means that I actually want to change this from string to a type. I'm going to take that out. Right? Okay, so we're going to modify that. And then I will fix this here. Because I copied and pasted that out. So now I can call it by name, but this probably is going to work so well because we're hard coding that. But we'll just fix that for now. So we have show internal type. Now that I have this type, I can say show dialog internal type, and then our callback again. Okay, so you see what I'm doing here. I created this static dictionary to hold on to our mappings to where we can map our view models against our views. Okay. Then what I'm doing is I am creating a register method so I can register those mappings in my application. And you know what? Let's just do that now. Let's just go. We can do it anywhere. Maybe in the main window view model, or excuse me, the main window in the constructor. I can say, oh wait, what's the name of it? It's called DialogService.register dialog. The view, which is the notification, and then we need a view model. We don't have a view model for this, so let's go ahead and do this. Add a new class. We'll call it notification, if I can spell. Nope, I can't. Notification view model. Okay, we'll say this is a public class if we want to. Derives from bindable base. Okay, we can add some properties on here if we want, you know, no big deal. Whatever we want to do, we can do it, whatever. And then now we're going to say notification view model. Now, this is okay. It's okay to reference a view object outside of a view model. That's why we can do that here. Heck, you might want to have a register place here in your application where you do all your registrations. But this is the idea. We're going to register this dialog. Whenever we call notification view model, we're going to show off the notification, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so now that we have that here, what I want to do is I'm going to update my view model, my main window view model. And actually, I'm going to comment that out. And instead of using the text here, we're going to use our little override, notification view model. Right? We're going to go ahead and run the app again. Here's our application running, show dialog. This is a notification. Looky there, close me. Here's our result, true. So it's the same behavior, right? It's the same behavior, but we were able to remove those magic strings that a lot of people don't like. And now we can like navigate or show dialogues based on strongly typed view models. Now, once again, you could take this even further because now we can add overloads to actually set the data context. You know, so if we're showing a show dialog type of T, you know, we can take this type and we can set the binding context of the view, right? So the content, so for example, let me just show a quick example. We'll say var content equals activator.createType. And then we'll set that to the content. But since we have the view model type up here, we could also pass that in if we wanted. And we can create an instance of that. We can say var view model equals same thing, activator, create instance, right? Data, data, data. But in this case, it would be the VM type, which we haven't passed in yet. And then you could say content dot data context. What? Content as, what is this? Framework element. Add our usings here. Right, we can do that. And now we're setting the data context automatically. Now, once again, we would have to modify this to pass in the VM type. So we can say type VM type, right? We want to pass the VM type here because we actually have it. So we'll say type of view model. Here we'll pass in null because we don't have the type of the view model here because we're not doing it. And that means what we'll want to do is we will want to add a little bit of code here saying, hey, if the VM type is not equal null, then we're going to run this code. Right? Something like that. You get the idea. You get where I'm going with it. So now what happens is when I'm registering this, where do we do that? Code behind? Yeah. When we register this notification with the notification view model, we're taking advantage of this abstraction that we've created with our service. And now we can do more intelligent things like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and set the view model. I'm going to create the view model because I have it. And I'm going to set the data context of that view that we're creating before I set it to the content here. Okay, so just to review, this is what we did. Overall, we had a command which was in a view model that when we clicked, we wanted to show a dialog. So we created a dialog service. This service exposed a method called ShowDialog. Now, we were able to take advantage of this abstraction between the interface and the implementation and hide away all the UI stuff that view models aren't allowed to know about. And then we implemented our logic. You know what? We're creating a dialog window. Not only that, we're bringing in dynamic content of the window. We're hooking into some events. We're creating things. We're setting data context. And we're just wiring everything up. But our view model doesn't care about all that abstraction, right? We made it so easy that this just works in the view model. Not only that, when you start doing production applications and you're doing things like dependency injection and you're not newing things up, things get really nice, really fast, really easy to maintain, really easy to extend, really easy to test. But essentially, anytime you have a question about how do I do this with a view model, it really comes down to creating that level of abstraction to where you abstract away the UI implementation concerns from the view model concerns. And a big way to do that is with an interface and with a service that implements that interface. Now, in a real application, this interface is going to be in another assembly like a core or shared or something that's used throughout your application. But the implementation may be in just one location, right? Or in like your UI object, I should say, your UI project. That's where the implementation would exist. That's it. That's how easy it is to show dialogues in MVVM just using a very simple abstraction with an interface. All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time.